Hello everyone, and welcome back to Aethelburg, an American's attempt at a European city in Cities Skylines 2. Last time we were here, we explored Hamburg on Google Earth to demonstrate the insane number of churches in a European city. But there was something else that I didn't show you at the time that immediately caught my attention when zooming out, and that is this absolute unit of a train yard just south of the city. This is the Maschen Marshalling Yard, the largest marshalling yard in Europe and the second largest in the world. 7 kilometers long, capable of handling up to 11,000 wagons per day, and after seeing it from space, I want to try something like it in Aethelburg. So today, we're building our very own marshalling rail yard and surrounding industrial district. We'll break down how a yard like this works, go over tips on how to build train yards in your cities, and hopefully put a dent in our unemployment. As always, if you're enjoying the ride, hit that like button so more people can discover Aethelburg. But with all that out of the way, let's begin. Let's briefly go over what a marshalling yard actually is and how it works, and you might hear it referred to as a classification yard or a shunting yard. All the same thing, basically a big railway facility where cargo trains are disassembled, sorted, and then reassembled based on their destination. And there are a few key parts here. So we have the main line up top going left to right, and the first part is the receiving yard where trains come in, they take up a track, and then an engineer will go through and disconnect each wagon from the rest of the train. From there, each wagon gets pushed over the hump, and not every marshalling yard is a hump yard, but the Maschen one by Hamburg that is, and this is literally a hump where it's a small mound, an engine pushes the wagon over this little hill, a scanner sees where this wagon needs to go, and gravity will do the rest, bringing it down into the classification bowl where all the wagons are assembled based on their destination. From there, the train can move to the outbound yard or the departure lines, where basically it waits to get back on the main line and be on its merry way. And here's an example of this with a train coming in, pushed over the hump, and then pre-sorted into their destination lines. A second train comes in, it's also sorted over the hump, and let's say that fourth line is going off to Paris. All 3 wagons now as a single train get pushed to the outbound yard before making its way onto the main line. So this is a pretty simplified model of a marshalling yard, but if you want to get really crazy with it, like Maschen, sometimes you'll have 2 sets of bowls here, one for east-west traffic and the other for west-east or whatever direction they're headed in. And this is actually what Maschen is. If we head back to Google Earth, you can pretty clearly see the 2 sets of yards here. So big classification bowls in the middle, one for westbound traffic, the other for eastbound traffic or north-south, wherever headed, and then departure/receiving lines on either side. And if we zoom in, we can actually see the hump itself. So this is the hump for this big classification bowl. You can see a little bit of a steep cliff there, even a road going underneath it. So wagons get pushed up over this hill, and then gravity takes care of the rest, the computer knowing where it needs to end up. And it even has a set of brakes on each line, just so the train or the wagon doesn't crash into the back of the train here. But enough theory, let's get to building. And I'm thinking for this episode, let's go a little bit outside the city limits over to our eventual megaport here. Now, I've said a couple times that I want to industrialize this area since it's a naturally protected harbor, protected against the open waters out there while retaining its outside connection underneath that bridge. So I think this is a good spot for the rail yard itself. We also have good natural resources here. If we take a look at our resources tab, we got oil and ore here aplenty. So we could do some kind of cargo depot that links up with the rail line itself, making its way out to maybe one more outside connection across the water there. In terms of layout, I'm thinking we'll branch another piece of rail over this little inlet right there, go underneath the highway, and then we'll have the rail yard hugging the highway corridor right here. We're going to use a little bit of terraforming, take some of this dirt, push it down here to reclaim a bit more land in between the coast and the highway, and that should give us enough room. So let's begin by going to our level terrain tool. We'll get 52 meters here, and then kind of smooth out the edges. But now for the technical part, which is laying down our train tracks. And there is one overriding principle I want to keep in mind here. And that is that a single track should branch off into 2 tracks. No more, no less. So if you're trying to go from a single track into 4 tracks, for example, let's do a little bit of a demonstration here. I'm using Tygon's rail infrastructure pack here, an awesome mod. And it has this 2-way train track unelectrified. It's a little cheaper than the normal track, so good for our budget. And it won't have power lines crisscrossing everywhere. But let's get just a single track going up here. And let's say we want to eventually end up with 4 tracks. Instead of doing something like a trident effect where you have a single node here, branching off into all 4 connections, that looks cool, but it's not realistic. What you want to do is instead branch off into 2 tracks first, and then those 2 tracks branch off into 2 more. And we'll use Move It to kind of smooth out those edges, make the turns a little less severe, but that is kind of the general principle, and that's what we're going to continue all throughout the rail yard. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to take a page out of Maschen's playbook and have 2 sets of yards here, one for eastbound traffic and another for westbound. For the eastbound, I'm thinking let's have the receiving yard going around this curve here, hump right there, then big classification bowl, and finally the outbound yard over there, and vice versa for the westbound traffic. Receiving yard, hump, classification bowl, and its outbound yard. And I'm thinking each bowl will be around 240 meters in length because that is the length of the train track inside this cargo terminal asset. And last, for some quick tips and tricks, what I like to do is start with a double track in parallel mode as close together as possible, so 0.25 units. And if you use snap to geometry and 90 on, you can lay down some tracks and then attach to an existing track, and the next one will be completely parallel and the same length, so it makes managing the symmetry a little easier. And once everything's connected, you can go to replace mode, turn off all snappings, and then bring these even closer together with anarchy on, so you don't have that random strip of grass in the middle. So that could be like a good receiving yard, but the classification bowl is supposed to be bigger. So we're going to use this 4-lane train track from Tygon's rail pack for the classification bowls. We'll get a couple of these down. Looks a lot more full. And from there we can go to a double track. Luckily, this abides by the 1 track to 2 track branch principle. You can see here that both tracks aren't trying to attach to all 4. So then we can go back to a single track and everything flows nicely together. That is the plan then. So with that, let's lay down this yard. So that took me about 2 hours in real time, just trying to smooth out all the kinks in these nodes here, make it as symmetrical as possible, and making sure that we don't branch off into more than 2 tracks here. So here's a branch going left and right. Pretty soon you have 2 more branches here, and then going all the way up to our set of quadruple tracks here. And this is from Tygon's rail pack again, so download that mod if you want to get something like this. but trying to smooth out the kinks when you have an elongated node going into a curve segment is a lot tougher than it sounds. And by that, I mean if you have a double track going into a single track. You can see by default, the turn here is a little abrupt for a big freight rail. So what I've been doing is going into manipulation mode with Move It, selecting that node, holding down Alt to keep this straight, and then dragging these back. And that looks a lot more gentle, a lot more realistic, but yeah, that combined with a curve can get really messy really quickly. So before moving on and doing the exact same thing in the opposite direction, let's raise up the hump. So I'm gonna go to Move It, single mode, select this node right here and raise it up. And already I can tell I'm messing up this connection here. Perfect. I'm gonna go to our contour lines and see that is about 4 meters above the ground here, so that's probably good for now. And if we want, we can tunnel a road underneath it, kind of like in Maschen. But now we have the enviable task of doing the exact same thing for westbound traffic. So good news is that time only took me 90 minutes, so getting better with practice, I guess. Before I forget, let's bring this segment up for the westbound hump. Sweet, and then we'll get some towers later for, engineers supervising the wagons as they go over the humps, but on to the main line. Here is the plan. We're gonna branch off from here, go over this little inlet, and we're gonna use some stone props from this awesome mod I just got to make this look like a more historic bridge before going underneath this highway segment, sloping down into the flat plain area. And I'm thinking let's go on the left side of the rail yard, just because I want the main line to have as few kinks as possible, just because it is the main line and I don't want trains to slow down too much. So we'll stay over here instead of winding along the coast, but we'll have branches going into both this outbound yard and receiving yard before making its way along this side. And then we're gonna slope up here gently before doing an awesome bridge segment into the great beyond. So first things first, let's make sure we have a gentle grade going down from here into the flat plane. And that is 1%, so that is plenty safe. And I'm gonna stick with the vanilla two-way track for this one. I was having some trouble getting cargo lines to apply to the unelectrified version, so we'll stick with the vanilla one for now. To make this as parallel as possible, I'm gonna go to some straight segments, come off at a 90 here, and then we can go like this before connecting all these straight segments up. And I'm leaving a little bit of room in between the rail yard itself and this main line, just in case we need some access roads or even a few more connecting train tracks, because sometimes, you need an emergency track going on to here. And we'll do something similar inside the rail yard where we can get some more, like yard stubs or storage depots, whatever we can think of. This part will be a little tricky because as you can see, we climb elevation pretty suddenly from this part of the map onto here. So we're gonna have to slowly build our way up along the cliff face here before we can do our bridge segment out there by the existing highway. So for now, let's curve over this little piece of land here. Kind of get lined up, and then we're gonna go to our slope terrain tool and make sure we are at, ideally no more than 2%. Let's go to 2% there. I'm gonna follow the contour lines as well. And not sure if I actually went to the spot, but let's go from here onto the plane, and 2.3 is pushing it. There we go, 1.8. And I'm just seeing all these kinks and I feel like that's a little dangerous, even though it is kind of following the terrain there. How about this? Let's bring this back, and from here at least, let's just straighten out the land. And that is 1.4%, so that's good. Much better, even if we have a few kinks over there. I think that gives a little character. So now for the bridge segment, and I am totally going to use this, wait for it, the double train track truss arch bridge. Say that 5 times fast. This thing is just beautiful. So let's get a straight segment so we're parallel to the highway first, and then we'll connect it up and finally make our outside connection. Want to make sure we also have enough height over this shipping yard. Even though I think some of the pillars are going to show up there, that's okay. We can finagle with it. Actually, that's okay. It's pretty equidistant on the edge there. Oh, is that too high though? Let's bring it down a smidge. I'm making it a little bit lower so we don't have to climb as much from our track over there, but that should be enough clearance for the cargo ship. I guess we'll see in a minute, but let's connect this up. And nice, under 2%, perfect. And boom, outside connection made. Let's make these connections and then we'll attach it to the yard itself. Okay, for these connections, same principles as within the rail yard itself. A single branch or a single track should go off into 2 branches and then 2 into 4. So we can kind of copy this pattern right here. Let's get a single unelectrified branch and we'll come off maybe from this 90 right here. And let's curve right into the middle there. And then same thing, we'll have one more branch coming from here, leading off into that, I believe that's the receiving yard. And if you get weird node wonkiness like that, don't fear, move it to the rescue. Okay, west side complete, on to the east side. Well, this is fun. This thing is totally not parallel. So I'm in marquee mode. I'm gonna select all of, those nodes, and I should be able to drag it down and twist it. Yep, just like that, until it's slightly more parallel. We'll bring it down so that looks a little better. Okay, a little better. Let's reconnect this. Alright, this is looking pretty good, but we can definitely fill in these cracks here with a few more depots, some storage yards, and definitely some access lines. So the two I'm thinking about are, if you're headed westbound but you want to get on the eastbound classification bowl, or vice versa, you're headed eastbound but you want to get onto the westbound, there's no easy way to do that right now. However, I think with a few access lines, we can remedy that. So I'm going to go to our regular single track, this guy right here. And for the first scenario where you're headed east but you want to get onto this classification bowl, let's just get a line going from this segment here into the main line. Oop, and I meant to use the unelectrified version. Nice, I got a refund from that. But basically, all you gotta do is come onto the receiving yard and then reverse course, which I think is pretty normal, so train engineers, check me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I saw on Maschen. For the opposite direction, that's a little tougher, because we want to be able to come this direction and get onto this receiving yard, but you can't really loop around here. So what I'm thinking is, you'd still get onto this line here, and then we can snake a track through this S-curve before meeting up here, and then you can back out. So let's give that a shot. We'll come off straight from this line here. And then this will be tight, but I think we can thread it. Okay, looking pretty good. So they just snake their way through here and then back up there. Let's fill in this gap with a few more storage yards. So finished up the access line into this little yard here. However, that is not good enough. We totally need another depot for the yard itself. The one in Depotville will not cut it. And what I'm thinking is, if we move the main line back a little bit here so it takes up this space, I think we can fit in this one from Tygon's rail infrastructure pack. The medium train depot long 5/6 track through, that's another mouthful. But basically, it's nice and thin, so I think we can squeeze it in here. Let's pause, or I'll wait till that poor train gets through. Okay, now let's pause the game, bring back the main line, and see if we can't get this right next to the current track. We'll have the road on this side and think about how we're going to connect it later. Let's get it up here. All right, sweet. Then we're going to get a single unelectrified track, and we'll come in at an angle through here. And did that connect? It did. Okay, let's connect the rest of these. Okay, step one, and then let's get the main line back, and I wonder if we can even connect this up to our access line right there. We'll give it a shot, but for this one, we're gonna have to go back to our vanilla double track. And that connection is just asking to be made, but the question is it gonna make a three-way branch? And I don't think so. Nope, goes off into two every time. We got some crisscrossers, but that's okay, not unheard of. Yeah, I'm glad that works. So let's finish connecting this side of the depot, but then we'll have to think about the road network inside the rail yard, not only to connect the depot, but any industries or factories we have inside, and those hump yard towers for the engineers to kind of oversee things. So that's gonna be fun. For the road network inside the rail yard, here's what I'm thinking. Obviously, we'll get an industrial road out to serve the depot here, and it can terminate right around there. But then we're going to do an at-grade crossing here just to simplify things. And I'm looking at Maschen, and I see a couple of at-grade crossings, so I'm okay with one or two of those. But that road right here can serve the observation tower for this hump before kind of slipping through this crack here. Coming along the main line, we're going to do a bridge segment over this line before snaking its way into the highway there. And then on the other side, we'll come off with another road going on this side of the rail yard, serving this observation tower for the eastbound hump. And then I'm thinking it'll snake along the coast here and act as a buffer in between the train track and the water here. So we'll slip along the coast here, and it can eventually serve whatever we build out there. I'm also aware that I have yet to buy these tiles, so I will get to that ASAP, but let's get down the roads first. We're going to go with this industrial road with shoulder, which is a little more narrow because it doesn't have sidewalks, but it's got wide lanes and shoulders for pedestrian access, which you technically need to attach to these assets here. But let's come out like this. Make sure we're at a right angle, and then I'm going to go parallel to the main line here. There's our at-grade crossing right there. Let's bring this road back a little bit because I want to make sure we have enough room for our bridge segment to make sure it's not too steep. So let's bring this up to 10 meters. Oh yeah, 3.5% is plenty fine for industrial traffic. So we'll get that over there and then we'll swoop back down. From here, we're going to get our water and sewage underneath all these roads. And then I promise I will finally buy those tiles. Did a really good job with that power line there. And look at that, no more complaints. So for these tiles, I have 2 free tiles left. So I'm gonna use them on these 2 because that's where the oil and ore are, which means they're gonna be a little more expensive. So let's use those and then we'll buy up the rest of these, which is still pretty expensive, but thanks to leveling up, we have a little bit more cash now. Other side now, let's go back to our industrial road with shoulder. Come off at a 90 from here, and this is going to be the backbone of our industrial grid in this chunk of land right here. But let's come off right around there. And then I want to make sure that this road is parallel to our tracks. So let's do a couple of guide roads. And that is perilously close to the water. Let's get a little bit more land out. And just kind of fill in this weirdly shaped coastline. Now we also need to serve this side of the main line, which is still kind of cut off from road access. What I'm thinking is let's take another page out of Maschen's playbook. They have a bridge segment like this with a 90-degree intersection in midair. Let's do the same thing coming from this node, going up at 90, and then that can come back down into this plane, which will eventually connect to this medium train oil yard, unelectrified. Again, from Tygon's rail infrastructure pack, which is incredible, highly recommend. And this is perfect because we got an oil field right along there. We'll plop it there, it'll connect into the main line here, and if it needs to go through the classification yards, it can take our access track here to get into this receiving yard before going out, or it can back up even more to get into this one before getting its way into that receiving yard. So a little bit of a roundabout way to get sorted, but I think it'll be worth it. So let's go back to our road, industrial road with shoulder, and come off from here. I want to make sure we have enough room in between the road and the track here for the depot itself. So let's bring this out to around here. 5% should be fine. And yeah, that's perfect because you can see there are some booths on the other side of this asset, closer to the main line, which means it expects road access there, which is a little weird, but that's okay. We can play with it. We'll have a couple of at-grade crossings there, but not the end of the world. Let's go to our train tracks again and connect this up. And then, yeah, let's just get a basic dirt road for this side. Again, not entirely sure why there are booths and roads coming off from this side of the asset, but I won't fight it. Let's just come off at a basic 90. It's okay if we have some at-grade crossings there. Lop off that node, And voila, now this is connected. Is it? It is. All right, we got water and sewage on the bridge segment itself. And then the final custom pieces of infrastructure are going to be the hump observation towers, if you want to call it that. I'm thinking over here, since we have a little bit more room, let's lay down an actual fire station that can eventually serve the entire port area. And I think the community firehouse looks like something out of a train station, so let's get an alleyway coming off at a 90 from the access road here. Fire station on this side. And then just a dirt parking lot on the other. Sweet. And then over here, we're actually going to use a static poppable of one of the extensions here, which is the community firehouse watchtower. I feel like this looks like something out of an airport. So let's just get this, let's get an access road coming off here as well. Watchtower on this side, gravel parking lot on the other. We can even surround it with a couple of factories, make it look a little more industrial, but that is the gist. And oh, I guess we got to make a district later. If you have any ideas for names for our kind of mega train yard here, let me know in the comments. But for now, we'll just create a basic district, call it train yard. And now it's time to get some jobs in this area, make it feel a little more alive. So what I'm thinking is, let's get some crops and livestock in this section, because we got some fertile land over here, plus we already have farming decals, so it kind of fits the vibe. On this side of the street, we're just gonna do some basic industrial zoning, fill in the gaps here, and then I think for today, I'm just gonna do a very basic oil field just to give this oil depot a reason to be. So nothing too crazy. It's really hard to make oil and ore fields look good, so I'd rather spend an entire episode on those to do like some crazy mining facility. But for now, we'll just get the resources flowing. Over here though, we're gonna take some inspiration from the port of Hamburg, which is just 15 miles north of Maschen, so still in the area. But as you can see, it's got this section where a train track is looping around a bunch of oil tankers. And there's even a section of the track where they can load oil directly onto the train or whatever it is they're storing in those tankers. But I think this would be a really cool spot for that. So what I'm thinking is, let's go to our level terrain tool, bump this up, and fill in this little gap of land here. Because I want to make sure we have a nice straight segment where, a long cargo train can stop and get loaded with oil. But then like Hamburg, we're going to have a bunch of oil tankers and, I don't know, hazardous waste, whatever cargo facilities we can get inside. To get a train track out here though, let's branch off from here. We'll do an at-grade crossing with this road there before going in between it and the coastline. We should have enough room, but let's just get a little more of a buffer. Then it's come in here, loop around, and then it's gonna flow out back through here. Before doing, we could do one more at-grade crossing to get into the outbound yard here, or we could make Crosswind Lane a bridge segment right there. We'll see what we feel like. Obviously, fewer at-grade crossings is better, but bridges are expensive, so we'll see. Let's go over here, get our single unelectrified track, and let's come off from here. And I'm gonna snap to the zoning grid here so we can make sure that we are nice and straight, parallel to the main road there before swooping in. Now from here, let's go into continuous mode. We're gonna come at a 90 like this, because then we're gonna come around the coastline, swoop back before looping back this way, meeting into this intersection right there so trains can turn around, or they can take a right and be on their merry way that way. This is the segment where I wanna make sure it's long enough to hold a single cargo train, so 240s should be good. And now we're gonna come back this way. And then from here, we will branch off to the right and go along the coast here, kind of in between this and the road. And I think for now I am fine with doing a simple at-grade crossing like this. But with that, we can dirty up this area with some polluting industry, some oil tanks, basically everything driving this moose pack directly into the water. Okay, this is looking pretty freaking cool, I think, despite the moose packs roaming around the train yard here, but I did a little bit more detailing than planned because there's this new mod called Real Vision by Static Noise, and it's all these incredibly detailed decals, cracked pavement, stains, and those combined with our traditional stain decals, I think just make for a really cool looking industrial area. We'll come back and finish the surrounding landscape, and there's another moose pack going, but yeah, we'll come back later, finish the surrounding landscape once we detail up the train yard itself. But we have a problem. We have all these oil tankers and no oil to fill. So very quickly, I'm gonna do a basic oil field right here by the depot, and then we can get a cargo route. So I'm gonna see where this resource is, and it's, as I feared, it's kind of up on the hill here, but the oil field does not show contour lines that well. So instead, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Let's bring the oil down into the flat part. Let's also fix this weird bridge that just ends at a 90 degree. Not sure what I was thinking there, but we can continue this into the hills here. It'll snake around the contour lines and eventually serve our ore mining facility at the top of the hill here. But it'll come down here and meet up at that intersection right there, I think, which, as people have pointed out, is incredibly dangerous, incredibly weird. We can get some stoplights there, I think. Yeah, 2.5% is perfect. And now we can finally tackle this area, get some crop production in this part of the map since it's all fertile land. And if we take a look at our production, we are at a slight deficit for cotton and almost a deficit for livestock, or for grain and livestock here. So we can fill those out a little bit. I'm also going to do some factories, some bigger warehouses, and we totally need a garbage facility. So what I'm thinking is, let's do something a little custom. In this block right here, I'm going to lay down a static poppable of the train maintenance yard. This guy right here, which just barely fits. Let's get that in the corner there. And we'll have to do a little bit of terrain work. Oop, not that much. Get some pavement down. And now we're gonna use our handy dandy service blocks for garbage, which is slightly cheating because it's only $2,000, but we're gonna need it. So let's get one of these down here. And what's really cool is if we now select that block, we can place garbage trucks in front of these bay doors. So originally, or like in the real asset, train tracks go through there, but I think we can make this work where it looks like the garbage truck is going into there. And this is like a transfer station where they drop off their garbage. And we'll get a bunch of these. And then we can add some dumps for more stored garbage capacity. And of course, we got to select pretty much every single district. And off you go. And you know, completely unrelated to zoning the rest of the train yard, our citizens are really unhappy with our mail service, and that might be because we don't have any. So let's very quickly get a small post office somewhere near the Altstadt. And I'm thinking maybe in this lot by High Street. So I'm gonna evict these people, get rid of these trees, and this should just perfectly fit in here. Yep, let's assign it and probably immediately upgrade it since this poor thing is going to be handling the entire city for now. And we'll let that be, see if that helps anything, but let's go back to the train yard and finish zoning out this area. And I'm proud to say that the train yard is now the employer of over 1,100 jobs. So that is awesome to see. And the education distribution is, okay, not so many at the high end, but that's not surprising given that it's mostly farms and factories. But let's check our unemployment. A cool 3%, that is awesome, even in reality. That's a really good stat, so finally we have a handle on unemployment. In terms of layout though, this was all fertile land and we were at a slight deficit for cotton and getting close for grain. So got a couple of grain and cotton farms now in surplus mode, and one more livestock farm, although we will probably need another one pretty soon. And then closer to the tracks, just basic factories here, and the dairy house, which I immediately unlocked upon placing this first farm. So that gives us 2% industrial efficiency and 2% export profits, which reminds me, we need to set up our oil cargo routes here. So let's do that right now. And we'll have one to Krukern out here. And another to our new outside connection to Corwin. Lovely. And already we have trains coming to serve the lines. That's awesome to see. In building all this out, I came very close to having a water deficit, so got one more small water tower, and that barely put us in the green. We'll probably need another one pretty soon. And then a small clinic in the area just to serve the train yard and Depotville, give the single clinic we have over in the Altstadt a little bit of a break. And then just for fun, I want to get a cargo route going to this part of the port here. Purely aesthetic. Obviously, it's not going to drop anything off or pick anything up, but I think it would be so cool if we saw a cargo train going down the coast here and then making this big loop. So what we're going to do is get a cargo route coming from Krukern. We're going to put a waypoint right here, make sure it comes around the curve, and then right back to crew kern. And am I wasting a train car on that? Yes, but 100% worth it. Okay, there's one more thing I want to work on before detailing up the train yard, getting some surfaces down, some train props to make it seem a little more lively. And that is this train bridge right here, which I mentioned I want to make it look a little more historic. And we can do that with an amazing new mod by someone named Fragonaut, who basically built like churches and medieval towers and walls. So this is from them, so you know we're totally going to get this church somewhere in the old town. But if we scroll down, I'm in Landscaping Parks tab. Right here, they built like castle walls and everything, and this is freaking incredible. But what I'm thinking is if we raise up the train bridge a little bit, we can use this bridge tower A part, or part A, I'm not sure, in a line with some alternating arches to make this thing seem like, I don't know, it's been there for 100 years. So let's begin by pausing the game because I'm going to delete this line, which will disrupt our cargo routes. We're going to bring it up a little higher so we can get 2 tiers of that stone arches. We're going to go over the main line here because as you can see, the terrain kind of goes up on the other side, so we can slope down gently this way. So let's go to our train, get our double track, and then bring this up. This will be a little tricky because I think this slope might be a little more severe. Yeah, 4% is way too much, I think, so let's use Move It to bring this node up. We can raise the road if we need to. Lower this one and make it seem a little more gentle. Okay, 2%. That is much more palatable. Do a little bit of cleanup. And then let's connect on this side. Excellent. And the great part about this is the cargo route does not need to make a right-hand turn because that just leads directly into the old town. So cargo routes are only going out to crew kern and the landscape out here. But now for the fun part, let's get these arches down. So let's begin by flattening the land right underneath the bridge because otherwise these props are going to end up at the bottom of the water there. So let's grab this elevation right here and go right underneath the bridge. Then we'll go to Landscaping, Parks, and we're going to use this one, Tower A part. Let's go to our line tool, and let's check out 10 meters maybe. Oop. There we go, that's what we want. I mean, right off the bat, that looks freaking cool, I think, but obviously we need to reposition them a little bit, so let's do some cleanup. And same thing on the other side. And again, we'll get rid of these built-in pillars here. Nice, okay, we'll fill in those gaps in a second, but next step is let's lower the ground to just below sea level. So it looks like the second tier of columns are still going into the water here. So let's grab maybe this elevation right here. And we'll do the same thing, but I'm gonna offset the arches to the halfway point just so we have this nice alternating pattern. And you can see that the arch actually went away, and I've seen this before. To get around this, just select it and then kind of shimmy it with Move It and they'll reappear, and then we can just do that en masse for the other ones. And just double checking both ends here. We might have to complete that in a second, but next step, let's bring back the terrain and see how this looks. Yes. I know I keep saying this, but this is so freaking cool. I'm just like so giddy right now. Thank you so much, Fragonaut. These props are incredible. So we'll clean that up. And I guess the obvious downside is that you can't have any boats going to this side. Although maybe if you have like a really small fishing vessel, you can squeeze through there. But we'll get rid of these built-in pillars, and then I'm going to shimmy these arches around so they reappear. Thank you so much to Fragonaut for making these mods. I can't wait to use the church and the medieval walls here. But kind of looks like an old Roman aqueduct almost. So even if that's blocking off all this coastal access, for aesthetics alone, I think that is 100% worth it. But that leaves us open to finally do some detailing over in the train yard. And the plan is to do a bunch of surfaces, stain decals, real vision decals, make it seem a lot grittier, a bunch of train props living on the tracks themselves, maybe even getting a cargo route or two going through here, kind of like we did with this loop right here, just to get some action in there. Some catenary, some power lines, anything else we can do to make this seem nice and gritty. We'll clean up the coastline though, and maybe fill in some of these gaps with a few more smaller yards. For example, a place to store the locomotive that pushes wagons over the hump here. And apparently we need yet more garbage dumps because the facility is already full, and it seems like we just keep increasing our garbage processing speed. So we'll get a few more of these and some static ploppables, maybe get a few more factories to fill out our jobs. But yeah, that is the plan. So let's get to detailing. And there you have it, a giant train marshalling yard whose footprint is now bigger than the entire city, I think. But quick recap. Honestly, I kind of struggled with the surfaces and which ones to use. So I ended up going with a combination of riverbed-based light underneath the bulk of the yard here. But then we got some large gravel underneath here, for example, and in between some of the yards. I used the oil surface actually underneath this section here with the real vision decals of a lighter pavement and the dirt road there, and then all these industrial props, as well as the ore surface, just to get some differentiation between that and the large gravel here. Same for it down here, large gravel, a little bit of ore and oil fields, but yeah, I used a bunch of stain decals as usual, and sand decals to kind of blend in all the surfaces here. And then obviously train props galore. So we got oil tankers here, extra bits of wood and metal in case they need to replace some section of track. Feeder tubes here, or not feeder tubes, but I don't know, maybe they're like loading grain in these 3 tracks here. And then of course the wagons themselves, the train cars themselves, which I did not have the heart in me to recolor each one. So we're just gonna say that these train lines are super colorful. And then similar treatment over here, though I did zone in a few more factories to fill up that space, but absolutely loved using the real vision decals underneath some of these props just to get some pavement underneath there so they don't, sink into the dirt, but obviously not very well maintained. And these decals just capture that perfectly. This area was really fun to do. Again, more real vision decals. So all props to static noise, no pun intended. But just seems like, they don't care that it looks good. They just care that it functions. And we got a dirt path going along here. I did do an invisible road, so we should have cars coming to and from eventually, because I do have a couple of modular zoning blocks in there, but really love how this area turned out. And last, I did get a crime notification, so ended up doing the German police headquarters here. This was actually the cheapest, so that's why I chose it, not because it looks cool, but figured, I don't know, maybe this could be like a train museum later down the line once this area continues to develop. So let's see if we can't spare one more cargo route, and then we're going to do one more thing, then I promise we'll get out of here. But let's go to our cargo route tool, and let's have one going right down the center of the east-west bowl, we'll say. Hopefully we have enough trains. And this track looks open. Nice, and then we'll come back on the other yard. And my naming is impeccable. Okay, so last piece of infrastructure I want to do is make this not a giant cul-de-sac, because right now the only road access is this highway by Depotville, since it ends right there. So what I'm thinking is let's take yet another page out of Maschen's playbook and do a bridge segment over the tracks here. We'll do an access road to reach these props and that slab of concrete there, meet up with Pearl Lane around here, but then we'll continue over the main line, come down here and do a simple diamond interchange with the highway right there. To begin, we're going to move Crosswind Lane closer to the tracks here so we have enough room for a bridge segment coming up on this piece of land here. So let's bring this a little closer. Sweet, that is now Thornbury Lane, so let's do our bridge segment, but we're going to do the industrial road without shoulders since we don't need to attach any assets to this. So let's come off from around here. I want to make this segment long enough where if you're coming down the bridge, you're not basically doing a tight U-turn if you're trying to turn right here. So let's get some length there. And now we can come up to, let's do 8.75 meters, which is the minimum for a bridge segment. 2.9% should be fine. We'll do that placeholder there first, but let's make this curve a little more gentle. Okay, looking a little better. So over here, instead of coming down directly from the bridge segment into the road around here, I want to avoid this spot since it's very close to the at-grade crossing there. And also if we just did a simple demonstration, going down to 0 meters, 7%, it's kind of pushing it. So instead, let's come down here, but then loop back around and have our intersection closer to the buildings here. Sweet. Okay, and then very simply, let's not do anything fancy. We'll just have the bridge come down here, and then yeah, basic diamond interchange. And naturally, I have not unlocked highways yet, so let's do that right now. Simple but effective. We can even turn these into some dumbbell interchange with kind of bigger roundabouts. Oh, I've not unlocked roundabouts either. Let's do that too. And there you go. Now it is not a cul-de-sac. And finally, let's get that access road coming off the bridge here in between these tracks. I think we may need to shimmy this track over a little bit to make room. And is that yet again a moose pack? They're everywhere. But let's start by going to our alleyways, getting this up to 8.75. And we'll come right down the middle here. And yeah, a little too tight. Let's use Move It to shift this track over. Just barely fits, and then we can dirty it up with some stain decals, maybe a couple more concrete slabs over there. And there you have it, our access bridge is complete. But alright, that about does it for today. So as always, thank you all so much for watching. If you have any suggestions or ideas, or if you're a train engineer and I got something horribly wrong, please let me know in the comments. Definitely want to make this accurate. And if you have any ideas of what we should name the train yard, curious to hear y'all's thoughts. So with that, I'll see you on the next episode and hope you have a good one. Bye.